So, when we come to the second part of the short story, this was not carelessness on the part of Jerome, as it was interpreted by Mr. Wordsworth to his colleagues. He even discussed with them whether, perhaps, Jerome was yes fitted to be a warden. Jerome was only attempting to visualize the strange scene, to get the details right. He wants to get what happened. Nor was Jerome a boy who cried. He was a boy who brooded, thought deeply, and it never occurred to him at his preparatory school that the circumstances of his father's death were comic. They were still part of the mystery of life. It was later in his first term at his public school, when he told the story to his best friend, that he began to realize how it affected others. So he tells the story to his friends about sudden death of his father as well. Naturally, after that disclosure, he was known rather unreasonably as Pig. Unfortunately, his aunt had no sense of humor, didn't understand. There was an enlarged snapshot of his father on the piano. A large set man in an unsuitable dark suit posed in capri pictures, it's giving a description, with an umbrella to guard him against sunstroke. The Farallon rocks forming the background. By the age of 16, Jerome was well aware that now he became a bit teenage now. He became well aware that the portrait looked more like the author of Sunshine and Shade and Rambles in the Balearics than an agent of the Secret Service. All the same, he loved the memory of his father. So he remembers the past. He still possessed an album filled with picture postcards. The stamps had been soaked off long ago for his other collection, and it pained him when his aunt embarked with strangers on the story of his father's death. So far, we see that what kind of feelings he had felt when he first heard all these happenings, for example, this shocking accident. But when we come to the age of him around 16, we can easily see that he is becoming a bit matured now, and he is also remembering those things within himself. So, a shocking accident, she would begin, and the strange would compose his or her features into the correct shape for interest and commiseration. Both reactions, of course, were false, but it was terrible for Jerome to see how suddenly, midway in her rambling discourse, the interest would become genuine. I can't think how such things can be allowed in a civilized country. So, at the age of 16 now, he is thinking a bit logically, plausibly, that how can this shocking accident, appear? How a pig can be kept at the balconies, fed there, it becomes fat, and then it falls on his father. He tries to find a solution to take or make some answers for those questions. I can't think how such things can be allowed in a civilized country, in Naples, in Italy, for example. His aunt would say. Also, his aunt is thinking that how it happened to him, to his brother, to her brother, sorry. I suppose one has to regard Italy as civilized. So, in a way, in this sentence, giving a remarks, bad remarks, or criticizing for the civilized country, one is prepared for all kinds of things abroad, of course. And my brother was a great traveler. He always carried a water filter with him. It means that he gives importance, let's say, to hygiene, for example. It was far less expensive, than buying all those bottles of mineral water. My brother always said his filter paid for his dinner wine. So he pays a lot of money for water filters in order not to get disease or catch diseases. He doesn't buy any ordinary water, bottled waters, for example. So you can see from that what a careful man he was, but who could possibly have expected when he was walking along Via Dottore, the name of the city, Manuel Porcel, on his way to the Hydrographic Museum, that a pig would fall on him. That was the moment when the interest became genuine. Jerome's father had not been a very distinguished writer, but the time always seems to come after an author's death. Okay. Let's go on with the other sentence. When somebody thinks it worth his while to write a letter to the Times Literary Supplement. Well, I don't know whether I had already talked about that Times Literary Supplement before. It is still continuing to give some authors remarks and give some critics views. And this was a very, very important magazine, let's say critic magazine at that time, and it is still being published now. Times Literary Supplement, announcing the preparation of a biography and asking to see any letters or documents or receive any anecdotes from friends of the dead man. Most of the biographies, of course, never appear. One wonders whether the whole thing may not be an obscure form of blackmail. Just pay attention about this word, blackmail, and whether many a potential writer of a biography or thesis finds the means in this way to finish his education at Kansas or Nottingham. Jerome, however, as a chartered accountant, lived far from the literary world. So he is a bit mature now, adult now in a sense. So he didn't put himself into the literary world as his father did. He didn't realize how small the menace really was, or that the danger period for someone of his father's obscurity. So his death is in a bit obscure, had long passed. Sometimes he rehearsed the method of recounting his father's death so as to reduce the comic element. The pig came and fell on his father's head, element to its smallest dimensions. It will be of no use to refuse information, for in that case the biographer would undoubtedly visit his aunt, who was living to a great old age, with no sign of flagging. It seemed to Jerome that there were two possible methods. The first led gently up to the accident, so that by the time it was described the listener was so well prepared that the death came really as an anticlimax. The chief danger of laughter in such a story was always surprise. When he rehearsed this method, Jerome began boringly enough, because he cannot find any solution for his thoughts or for his questions. You know, Naples and those high tenement buildings. Somebody once told me that the Neapolitan always feels at home in New York, just as the man from Turin feels at home in London. So he makes a comparison and tries to find out the differences as well, because the river runs in much the same way in both cities. Where was I? So in this sentence again, he wants to make his final answer. Yes, Naples, of course, because his father was there. You'd be surprised in the poorer quarters what things they keep on the balconies of those skyscraping tenements. Not washing, or bedding, but things like livestock. In this sense, livestock means that it's a shelter, let's say, for the animals where they are kept, they are fed, they are given care, let's say. So the balcony was a place for the pigs where they were kept and fed as well. And he's still trying to find a solution again that why do people keep their animals at the balconies? For example, pig. Why was it kept at the balcony, for example? Chickens or even pigs. Of course, the pigs get no exercise whatever and fatten all the quicker. In this sense, you can easily understand that. For example, in our modern time, we are just living in our apartments. So many of us don't have any private gardens for each family, let's say. So if you are keeping some pets in your homes, for example, you cannot find any place to feed them, to take care of them. So you keep them at your homes as well. So in this sense, we understand that there are blocks of apartments at this sentences that they have no any gardens. So some people kept their chickens, pigs, or livestock, let's say, the other small animals, at their balconies. So that's a quite strange thing as well.